He was known as the quiet one, calm, respectful, always keeping to himself. But one heated meeting changed everything. A single misunderstanding turned into whispers, then into labels. The angry black man. They said he was unprofessional, unstable, dangerous. What they didn't know was that he was about to uncover something far darker than their prejudice. A secret buried deep within the company's walls, one that could destroy powerful lives. This isn't just a story about stereotypes. It's about how truth can turn the tables when no one sees it coming. It started like any other Monday morning. The sun slipped through the tall glass windows of the corporate office, bouncing off polished floors and expensive suits. The company was a powerhouse in its industry, a place where image mattered more than integrity. For months, Carter had worked tirelessly, often the first to arrive and the last to leave. His co-workers admired his discipline, though few ever truly knew him. He kept to himself, calm and composed, believing that hard work would always speak louder than prejudice. But behind polite smiles and boardroom chatter, something darker lingered. Subtle jokes disguised as humor, comments about his tone, questions about whether he was too passionate. Carter brushed them off, trying not to feed the stereotype they already whispered about. The angry black man. He'd learned early on that silence was often the safest armor. Still, something about the office felt off lately. Whispers stopped when he entered rooms. Projects he'd led were suddenly reassigned without reason, and every time he raised a question, management told him to just focus on his role. It was the kind of quiet discrimination that didn't make headlines, but left invisible scars. Carter told himself it was just workplace politics, until one meeting changed everything. A presentation he had spent weeks preparing was suddenly hijacked by someone else, a junior employee favored by the CEO. The tension in that room, the way eyes darted toward him, the uncomfortable silence. It was the moment when the mask of professionalism began to crack. He didn't know it yet, but what happened in that meeting would uncover something far more dangerous than workplace bias. It would lead him straight into the center of a secret powerful, enough to bring the entire company to its knees. The meeting had been Carter's chance to prove himself, a presentation that could have sealed his promotion after years of silent endurance. But as the slides flashed on the screen, he realized something was wrong. His name was missing. The data he had collected, the strategy he'd built, all credited to someone else. The CEO nodded approvingly at the young analyst standing confidently at the front, the same one who had once asked Carter to review his work just days earlier. Carter sat frozen, his jaw tight, as applause filled the room for a plan he had created. He waited for acknowledgement, for someone to correct the mistake. No one did, not even his manager, who avoided his eyes completely. When the meeting ended, Carter gathered his notes silently, his chest heavy with disbelief. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence in that room had already spoken louder than words ever could. That night, alone in his apartment, Carter replayed every moment. Every time he'd been overlooked. Every time he'd been told to tone it down. Every meeting where his ideas were brushed aside, only to resurface later under someone else's name. The pattern was clear now. It wasn't just bias. It was a system, a calculated effort to keep people like him in their place. But Carter wasn't the type to break easily. The next morning, he started digging. Not for revenge, but for truth. He went through old emails, internal memos, and financial reports. The deeper he looked, the uglier it got. He found inconsistencies, contracts altered, budgets manipulated, and donations that didn't match the books. And at the center of it all was the CEO, the same man who smiled for diversity campaigns and talked about equal opportunity. Each discovery pulled him further into a dangerous web. When he tried to confront HR, they brushed him off, calling it a misunderstanding. His access to company files was suddenly restricted. Then came the meetings without invites, the sudden drop in his performance reviews, and the anonymous warning in his inbox. Stop digging. Carter knew what that meant. Someone was watching. His every move, every login, every question. The same people who labeled him angry were now scared. But fear wasn't new to him. He'd lived with it all his life. The fear of being misjudged. The fear of standing out. The fear of speaking up. One evening, as he stayed late in the empty office, he stumbled upon a confidential folder hidden on a shared drive. Inside were files linking the CEO to a secret plan. Mass layoffs disguised as restructuring, targeting minority employees under the excuse of performance optimization. Carter felt his stomach twist. It wasn't just discrimination anymore. It was exploitation. A corporate cleansing wrapped in polished words. He copied the files, his hands trembling. He knew if they found out, his career would be over. Maybe worse, but for the first time, Carter wasn't afraid. As he shut down his computer, the elevator doors opened, and standing there was his manager, eyes cold, voice calm. "Working late again, Carter?" he asked. Carter forced a smile, but inside he knew. The storm had begun. Carter arrived at work the next morning to find his ID card disabled. His desk cleared out. No explanation, no warning. Security guards stood by, silent, as he was escorted through the glass lobby in front of everyone. The whispers followed him like echoes of betrayal. "Did you hear?" he snapped. "Told you." He had a temper. The story was already written, and he was the villain once again. But Carter wasn't leaving quietly. He had already sent copies of the documents to a trusted journalist the night before. As he walked out, he could see the CEO watching from his corner office, calm, confident, certain that this would end the same way all corporate scandals end. Quietly. Hours later, the story broke online. Headlines spread like wildfire. Corporate giant accused of systemic discrimination. Emails leaked, showing the CEO's restructuring plan that targeted minority employees. Internal messages mocked diversity initiatives as PR cover. The company's stock began to plummet. Panic erupted. Inside that chaos, Carter sat alone in a small cafe, watching the coverage on a muted TV screen. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. His truth was. The same people who silenced him were now scrambling for statements, hiring lawyers, denying everything. Yet deep down, Carter felt no joy, just exhaustion. Years of restraint had led to this one explosive moment, and it had cost him everything. As he stepped outside, the night air felt heavier than ever. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. A single message. "You think this is over?" He looked around, the city lights flickering against the windows. Maybe they could destroy his career, his reputation, but not the truth, because now the world was watching. In the weeks that followed, the company scrambled to recover. The CEO resigned under personal reasons, and an internal investigation confirmed everything Carter had exposed. The media called it one of the biggest corporate discrimination scandals in recent years. For a brief moment, it seemed justice had won. But Carter knew better. He wasn't reinstated. His name was cleared, but his career in that industry was finished. He became another silent casualty of truth-telling, the kind they thank publicly, but blacklist privately. Still, he didn't regret it. The truth was finally out. Former employees began reaching out, sharing their own stories of being silenced, demoted, or pushed out. What started as one man's fight became a collective awakening. Carter's courage had opened a door that couldn't be closed again. He took time away from corporate life, choosing instead to mentor young professionals, teaching them how to protect their work, their dignity, and their voice in spaces that weren't built for them. He learned that change doesn't always happen in boardrooms. Sometimes, it begins with one person refusing to stay quiet. Carter often thought about that label, the angry black man, the one they tried to use to break him. But now he saw it differently. They mistook his strength for anger, his truth for aggression, his passion for threat. And in that misunderstanding, they revealed more about themselves than they ever did about him. The system still stands. The prejudice still lingers. But with every story like Carter's, another crack appears in the walls that hide it. Because sometimes, silence is survival. But speaking up, that's how history changes. So, the question remains, how many more voices have to rise before the world finally listens? Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.